with the weather. Enjoy.
Warm and cosy, with a chance of zero visibility. Boxed Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello there and welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. As we end the weekend and start the new week, there's going to be plenty of blustery showers around, and some of them will turn wintry once again across the northern parts of Scotland. That high pressure that we saw on Saturday has now moved off towards the continent, and we again see this low pressure in charge. But that persistent rain that we saw this afternoon is pushing off towards the North Sea, leaving many of these showers around through this evening and through the overnight period. There will be some breaks in that cloud, especially towards southeastern England, but it should remain a relatively frost-free night, even if you do get some breaks in that cloud through the early hours. But towards the eastern parts of Scotland, around Aberdeenshire, the more prolonged breaks in that cloud will allow those temperatures to dip below freezing, so we could see a frost first thing on Monday morning. But for the rest of the UK, especially across the south, it will be a mostly dry start in between these showers. A few breaks, so we'll see some sunnier spells first thing. But further north, there is a lot more in the way of cloud, especially northern England and Northern Ireland. But again, eastern Scotland seeing some nice sunny spells. They've not seen a lot of this for much of February so far, but there is a band of these showers across the north which could turn wintry along those higher hills through the morning and into the afternoon. Now that feeder showers do continue into the afternoon, coming in this northeasterly wind, and they can be blustery at times. If you are caught in one of those heavier showers, you'll notice those winds pick up. But in between those showers, there will be some sunnier spells, especially across the south, the northeast, and again towards the northern parts of Scotland. Temperatures wise, around or just above the seasonal average, around 7 or 10 degrees further towards the south. Now as I head through Monday evening, you'll see those wintry showers coming in towards northern Scotland, which is drawing in some colder air as well. But as we look through the week, Tuesday's looking like a pretty sunny day at the moment, but as we go through Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, temperatures are dipping around those mid-single figures.
Warm and cosy, with a chance of zero visibility. Boxed Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
There's only 2 weeks remaining to see how you could win a whopping £30,000 in tax-free cash. Plus, we could be sorting out your summer with an incredible holiday for two worth £10,000, courtesy of Riviera Travel. You'll get to choose from 47 tours in over 30 worldwide destinations. For another chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB19 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 27th of February. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk then?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I ever got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power?
Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber.
Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics.
We'll see where this ruling takes us.
These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too. From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, D.C.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show live every night at midnight.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
We love Great Britain. We love its history, its culture and its tradition, and that's why we're so proud to be part of GB News.
You look genuinely emotional. Oh, come here.
GB News does pay attention to those who are ignored by the mainstream media. The majority of this country whose forefathers fought and died to maintain liberty, to fight for freedom of speech.
The rule of law, the rights of property and democracy. This is the heritage that our country should be so proud of.
Which of course includes our Christian heritage. There's been a huge resurgence in the number of people going to church. Perhaps they're not finding what they're looking for, and they're looking for something a bit deeper, a bit more truthful, a bit more akin to Britain's Christian heritage.
That's right, get ready, because the most exciting night in general election history starts now!
Hello there at 6 o'clock. Welcome back to GB News. Let's get you up to date with the headlines. The government could impose fresh sanctions on Russia after finding the Kremlin killed the political prisoner Alexei Navalny with frog poison. The UK and 4 allies say their analysis shows Moscow was responsible for the death of the opposition leader in a penal colony 2 years ago. Foreign Secretary Yvette Cooper says only the Russian government had the means, motive and opportunity to use it. The Kremlin maintains Mr. Navalny died of natural causes and dismissed the findings as a Western propaganda hoax. While speaking at the Munich Security Conference, Ms. Cooper's US counterpart Marco Rubio described the report as troubling.
We obviously are aware of the report. It's a troubling report. We're aware of that case of Mr. Navalny, and certainly it's we don't have any reason to question it, or we're not disputing or getting into a fight with these countries over it, but it was their report and they put that out there.
The former Lib Dem leader Vince Cable says the police should investigate Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor over claims he leaked confidential information to the sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. It's reported the former prince passed on details about the £45 billion government bailout of Royal Bank of Scotland, details he learned about in his role as trade envoy. Sir Vince, who was business secretary at the time, reacted to allegations in the Mail on Sunday accusing Andrew of dreadful, cynical behaviour. Mr Mountbatten-Windsor has always denied any wrongdoing. The Prime Minister is facing calls for an inquiry into a Labour think tank's investigation of journalists. The Sunday Times says Labour Together, the group that helped make Sir Keir leader, hired lobbyists to investigate the personal, political and religious background of a reporter behind a story about secret donations that fund the think tank's work. It's reported the group paid £36,000 to a US lobbying firm to discredit the newspaper by falsely suggesting its reporters had links to Russia. And good news for Team GB. They have claimed a second gold medal at the Winter Olympics. Charlotte Banks and Hugh Nightingale won the mixed team snowboard cross a little earlier. It is Great Britain's first ever Olympic title on snow, extraordinarily, and the first time Team GB have won 2 gold medals at a single Winter Games, making up for some of those 4th places Team GB had earlier in the Games. Those are your headlines. I'll be back with more at 7.
Tune in to GB News Radio wherever you are. Online, on DAB Digital Radio, on TuneIn, on Radio Player, on Nation Player and on your smart speaker. Just say, play GB News.
Joining me now is Graeme Downie, the Labour MP for Dunfermline and Dollar. Lovely to see you this morning, Mr Downie. I think you are a Tominey show virgin, if I can call you that, so it's good to speak to you. And it's good to speak to a Scottish Labour MP. I'm going to get on to Anna Sarwar's intervention in just a moment. Tim Montgomery and I were just discussing the story on the front of the Sunday Times about Labour Together having paid £36,000 to a US public affairs firm to try and smear two Sunday Times journalists who you're no doubt familiar with, Gabriel Pogrund and Harry York. Shouldn't Labour Together now be told that they should have no involvement at all with the Labour Party and government if this story is true?
Honestly, I think we've seen statements like this. Labour Together have responded, I think, very effectively to these allegations that have come around over the last few months. And I think, to be honest, I think we should just leave that to carry on. I think we've seen that being done very effectively. I think the political parties will raise money. They will, of course, go about and campaign as they should. I think we've seen previous newspaper articles fairly well debunked as being frankly a load of nonsense over the last few months. So I think we'll leave that one to carry on. Labour Together, I'm sure, will respond again in the way they choose.
But I only make the point because this week at the Munich conference, Keir Starmer has been accusing Reform of being soft on Russia. And this is quite Kremlin-esque, isn't it, to dig into the backgrounds of UK journalists?
No, I mean, that's quite
aren't you disturbed by this, Mr. Downie?
That's absolute nonsense, Camilla. I think what is definitely pro-Russia is when you've got a Reform Party whose former leader in Wales was actually directly funded by President Putin's Kremlin. I think that's what you call a pro-Russia political party, and that's what we've seen from Reform over a number of years now, with very dodgy funding coming from different places, and that's where we should be looking at as well. The government's is already looking at how we fund political parties and elections. There's legislation on that being considered in the House of Commons just now as well. But I'm very glad you brought up the Prime Minister's speech in Munich. That was, I think, a fantastic speech. As someone who's got an interest in defence as well, in particular in high north security, as a Scottish MP, I think we're seeing this government take that security threat from Russia seriously. The UK is a frontline nation. I think that's what we're seeing, how we combat that threat from Russia properly and effectively.
OK, we'll get on to the speech in Munich in just a minute, but just if we continue the Russia theme when it comes to the postponement and indeed cancelling of elections over there, we've now got the head of the Electoral Commission criticising the Labour government for postponing these elections. Why would the government know better than the Electoral Commission's own head? This is the watchdog for elections in this country. We've now got 4.5 million people denied their democratic right in May.
I think, again, Camilla, as a Scottish MP, that's not something I've been directly affected by. We're carrying on. As you would imagine, we've got elections in May where we'll try and make Anas Sarwar the First Minister of Scotland after 20 years of the SNP failing on public services like health, education and elsewhere. Again, this is something that I think we've seen the government have very strong and robust reasons why the local authorities are choosing to postpone those elections. In the meantime, of course, democracy is an absolutely vital thing to continue with. Those elections will be held down the line at more appropriate times. But the requests for those elections to be postponed have come from the councils themselves. And I think that's the thing to remember as well. My focus is on what I'll be doing later on this morning, which is knocking doors in Dunfermline and Dollar and campaigning for our fantastic Scottish Labour candidates for the elections in May.
Wouldn't there be something ludicrous about installing Anas Sarwar as First Minister for Scotland if he thinks that the Prime Minister isn't up to the job?
No, absolutely not, Camilla. I think that's a fairly ridiculous perspective to have. Anas Sarwar has been very clear in his views, and that's his right as an individual, as the leader of the Scottish Labour Party. He's asked questions, he's got his views, he's entitled to hold them. What the election in Scotland is about whether or not we want a third decade of the SNP in power, ruining Scotland's health, education, skills, and other systems. Meanwhile, we've got a threat from Russia that you mentioned before that the SNP is not taking seriously by abandoning engagement with defence companies. That's what the choice is that Scottish people have in May, and that's what we'll be campaigning for strongly.
Sorry, Mr. Downie, you think it's ridiculous of me to suggest that there may be a contradiction at the heart of Anas Sarwar aiming to be the First Minister of Scotland when he has actually called for his own Prime Minister and his own party to resign, saying the government's made too many mistakes? You don't think there's a conflict there? There's a conflict, isn't there, Mr. Downie?
He is campaigning to be the First Minister of Scotland. That is exactly what he's campaigning for.
But he doesn't think the Prime Minister should be in place. This is the Labour leader and Prime Minister, and Anas Sarwar doesn't think he should be there, and you don't think that's a contradiction?
Absolutely not. He's given his views on the Prime Minister as the leader of the Scottish Labour Party. He's absolutely entitled to have those views. The Prime Minister has made clear he's spoken to Anas a number of times over the last week. The Prime Minister's mission and Anas Sarwar's mission are both the same, which is to replace John Swinney as the First Minister of Scotland at the elections in May. And that's what they will carry on working together to do.
So Anas Sarwar wants to carry on in his role, even though he's openly called for the Prime Minister to resign. By the way, his press conference proved to be a completely damp squib. It's hard to disagree with him, though, isn't it, Mr Downie, when he says that the government has made, quotes, too many mistakes. We're now up to U-turn number 14, I believe.
I mean, the Prime Minister has the full support of the Cabinet. He has the full support of the Parliamentary Labour Party. I fully support the Prime Minister. And as well,
he doesn't have Anas Sarwar's support, though, does he?
The Prime Minister has said that he does acknowledge that the government has made mistakes and he's taken responsibility for those. But equally, this government has done an incredible amount of good things for people in Scotland. We've had increase in the minimum wage. We've lifted 80,000 children out of poverty. We've had record settlements from the UK government to the Scottish government that the SNP have squandered once again.
But don't you think that Anas Sarwar calling out the Prime Minister's mistakes undermines his position in Scotland? Why would Labour voters in Scotland have confidence in a potential First Minister that doesn't have confidence in his own Prime Minister? I'm sort of having to explain this. I think people watching and listening won't believe how you're reasoning this.
They're choosing a First Minister who is, as he's demonstrated, is his own man with his own views and will put the people of Scotland first. That's what Anas will do as First Minister of Scotland, which is in direct contradiction to what we've seen the SNP do for the last 20 years.
Do you think Starmer will still be Prime Minister in a year's time?
Absolutely.
OK, even though he's got the lowest satisfaction rate of any PM in modern history, and 52% of Brits said that they wanted him to resign earlier this week, according to a poll by Politico, he just hangs on despite being unpopular, does he?
I think the Prime Minister is not hanging on. The Prime Minister is delivering on the priorities of the British people. We're focusing on tackling the cost of living. We're focusing on making sure this nation is secure in a way that our armed forces were hollowed out by the previous government. This government is going about correcting that. As the Prime Minister has said, of course, this government has made mistakes. He's taken responsibility for those. But we have nonetheless done an incredible amount of things for the people across this United Kingdom. We've got to make sure we carry on doing that in these very difficult and troubled global times as well. But the Prime Minister has the support of the Cabinet. He's got the support of the PLP. He's certainly got my support to carry on that fantastic work that he's doing.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions. But every Friday night at 9 p.m, you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
First of all, let's get a grounding here. What makes Scotch Scotch?
Well, first of all, and most importantly, Scotch whisky must be made and aged here in Scotland, but it goes beyond that. So, for example, it must be aged in oak barrels here for a minimum of 3 years. It can't contain any added flavourings. It must have a minimum strength of 40%. Quite a long list of requirements that makes Scotch whisky unique to Scotland.
And of course it must be delicious in every glass and every tasting, doesn't it? Now, around the world, you know, we hear about fakes, we hear about counterfeits. How do people take advantage of Scotland? We see a lot of Scottish-style whiskies out there, and that's where you come in.
Well, absolutely. So the Scotch Whisky Association, on behalf of the industry, is there to protect the geographical indication Scotch whisky. So sometimes we're dealing with products that are called Scotch whisky when they're not. For example, they've not been aged. In other places, people are trying to take advantage of our culture. They might be using tartan, they might be showing bagpipers, using the words Glen, Mook, all these sort of things to try and confuse people into thinking that what they're drinking is Scotch when it certainly isn't.
Now, it's quite common. We see, obviously, a lot of us go on holiday and we see bottles of whiskey and we want to bring them home. Sometimes they even look unusual, and that's why we want to, people want to bring them home. But if somebody thinks that they're bringing home not the genuine article of an established distillery, what kind of things are they looking out for?
Well, first of all, I can reassure everyone that if you're buying your Scotch whisky from a normal retail channel, duty-free, then the chances of coming across a fake are tiny, infinitesimal, because they have very strong controls. And it's also worth noting that all brands of Scotch whisky must be verified by UK Customs.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
no,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Earlier, I spoke with Priti Patel, the Shadow Foreign Secretary at the Munich Security Conference. Dame Priti Patel, Shadow Foreign Secretary, joins me now from the Security Conference in Munich. It's a little chilly, Dame Priti. Thank you very much indeed for bearing with the cold to speak to GB News this morning. Thank you. There's been quite a theme around Brexit and perhaps the reversal of Brexit with what Keir Starmer has been saying at the conference. What do you make of his quest to realign with the European Union on issues such as energy, security, the military?
Well, Camilla, you'll know my views. I completely disagree with his attempt to reverse Brexit. He doesn't have the mandate to do it. And of course, we've been watching him over the last 12 months on our fisheries, giving them away with that 12-year deal that he has agreed with the EU. And I would argue that this is not the right time to be doing this, of course. His approach is completely wrong. He's not transparent about this. And I have to say, it is desperate politics, basically, to appease his backbenchers and his political party. And quite frankly, there are so many major domestic issues that he should be focused on. And it's yet another distraction strategy by Keir Starmer and his failing prime ministership while he has lost authority in his party.
Although doesn't he have the support of Donald Trump's right-hand man on such issues, Marco Rubio, who's also said to the conference that he too supports the idea of aligning with the EU, maintaining that relationship between the US and the European Union? Some could argue that Starmer's only leaning into that.
Well, actually, I think the two are totally different. I think what Secretary Rubio has been referring to is absolutely in terms of the strategic partnership and alliance, the historic alliance that has existed between the United States and Europe for decades. And his speech was well considered and well thought out in the way in which he delivered it. And he spoke about that historic relationship. We know very, very well that Britain stands strong outside of the EU. It was the United Kingdom that led the response to Russia's illegal invasion in Ukraine. And on that basis alone, this is not about, greater alignment with the EU on issues such as climate and all those political areas that Keir Starmer is focusing on. The reality is right now, what we've heard from the Americans at the Security Conference is that we all need to put hard cash back into our defence and security. We have to address the world that we live in right now, not look backwards, but look forwards. And we have to confront the axis of authoritarianism and those states that are working to undermine our democratic values and freedoms.
Keir Starmer stated in the Labour manifesto that there were red lines he wouldn't cross. He didn't want to re-enter the single market or the customs union. Do you believe him?
No, of course, I do not believe him at all. I think he's completely untrustworthy on these issues. He says one thing and does another. And of course, this is a Prime Minister that I think is now up to U-turn number 15 or 16. The British public can see that we've got a weak and feeble Prime Minister. He says one thing, then he's sort of like bullied and forced into different positions by his own backbenchers. He's not in control of his party, his government, and the country can see we have a weak Prime Minister. And the reality is, when it comes to all matters on the EU, he's desperate to rejoin the EU club, and that is his persona. And he was once shadow Brexit secretary, and he was campaigning for another referendum. So he's not put our national interests first at all, and this is a political agenda that he is trying to pursue, and I can tell you it's one that's going to be detrimental to our country and our economy.
There could be some who criticise the Tories for not maximising our post-Brexit potential enough, and that has then opened the door to this kind of reversal. If the Tories had done better at maximising Brexit opportunities, you wouldn't have people in this country suffering with what's known as regrets.
Well, I disagree with that, Camilla, because, you've also got a government that is lauding up its ability to do trade arrangements, free trade agreements around the world. And that is very much because of Brexit. So whether or not it's with America, whether or not it's with India, the fact that we can actually cooperate in different ways is exactly what Brexit is about. Yes, it takes time, but do not forget we have one of the biggest trade partnerships now with our friends, in Asia, Pacific countries, and a region that really matters to our country. So that is absolutely Brexit working. Outside of our membership of the EU, we've been able to do much more in terms of defence and security when it comes to obviously supporting Ukraine. And just a final point, here at the Munich Security Conference, there's been a lot of frustration aired about the fact that we're all held back by still working within certain institutions that are not necessarily functioning. We heard Senator Rubio speak about the United Nations needing reform. Well, as you absolutely will remember, I was a Secretary of State, the first Secretary of State to call for reform of some of these institutions and organisations, cutting back their money and putting in performance criteria. That's the world that we live in, and Britain has the agility now outside of Europe to get on and do the things that matter to our country, that matter to the British people, to British taxpayers, and actually stand tall in the world. And that's exactly what we should be doing much more of.
We've had this extraordinary revelation from Porton Down that Alexei Navalny may have been poisoned with toxin from a frog. Meanwhile, we've got Starmer accusing Reform of being too close to Russia, or at least soft on Russia. Do you agree with his analysis?
Well, I think, first of all, Reform will have to account for their own conduct and behaviour, and the fact that it is a fact that one of their members and leaders of their party in Wales has taken money from Russia. That's an absolute outrage and disgrace. They'll face the consequences of their actions. Now, of course, when it comes to Russia, Russia is a threat to our country and has been for well over a decade now. And it was my colleagues in government, our former Home Secretaries and Foreign Secretaries, that took very firm action against Russia. We've had the whole issue of state-sponsored terror and poisoning in our own country. But what I would say is that what we've learned in the last 24 hours around the poisoning, the state-sponsored assassination of Alexei Navalny is absolutely horrific. And of course, Russia has a long and dark history of state-sponsored assassinations that dates back to the Cold War. And it ranged from Novichok to ricin to cyanide, and now this latest poison that the Russians create in their own laboratories. So this demonstrates that Russia is a threat to all of us. They're part of the evil axis of authoritarianism. We cannot ignore the threat that Russia, China, Iran, North Korea, the whole axis poses to our own country, to our own way of life, to our freedoms and democracy. And Camilla, for the first time, certainly since the end of the Cold War, we're fighting for those values and freedoms. And we absolutely need to stand strong in the world, but we've got to put our money where our mouth is. We've got to be resourcing our defence, our intelligence, our security apparatus to absolutely confront these challenges that we are now facing. This is a very, very serious time. And at this conference, we've heard the Americans speak about that. We've heard many of our our other friends and allies speak about this too. And we can't just sort of give issues, speak about words and rhetoric anymore about what we'd like to do. We have to stand up and actually deal with these issues head on.
Can we bring it back to domestic matters for a moment, Dame Priti, and just talk about Sir Jim Ratcliffe's comments about the UK being colonised by migrants? Do you agree with that rhetoric?
Well, look, first and foremost, you know, Jim Ratcliffe has to account for his own comments, but I do just want to say, when it comes to the issue of migration, we've discussed this many times, we have to be strong and we have to be firm in terms of the way the government of the day, and including the not just the government but the policies that we put forward, how we deal with these issues. The public have major concerns, we have major concerns, and as you know, with my party, we're fundamentally clear in terms of what we would do now. We have to change our laws, we have to leave the ECHR, we have to have policies that actually deal with these issues, people's fears, concerns, anxieties, and effectively change our laws. And that's the policy position that my party is putting forward. You know my views when it comes to illegal migration. We have to have stronger deterrence. We have to remove illegal migrants. We cannot allow them to continue in the merry-go-rounds of trying to go to the courts and claim asylum in this country. We have had all the warnings for too long, and we need to act. And that is why my party is putting the policies forward that we are on this issue.
But you do appreciate that many won't trust you on those pledges, not least because the Tories, and when you were Home Secretary, allowed in record numbers of migrants, 745,000 in 2022 when you were in post. So you can appreciate that people regard your comments on this with a degree of cynicism.
Well, they can, Camilla, but what I say now is that even when I was Home Secretary, when it came to illegal migration, we had those policies on tough deterrence. We've got a government now. This is about the current government failing to deal with these issues and address these issues. My party is clear. We're going to change our laws, and that isn't just about words and rhetoric. We have done the work when it comes to the policy delivery to leave the ECHR. Name another political party that has made the commitment, demonstrated the work, shown the frameworks that would bring the policy deliveries and operationalise those policies. And we are committed to bringing that forward. It'll be part of our manifesto, and we know how we will deliver that. That's the fundamental difference between us and every other political party.
Dame Priti, one final very quick question, because we are struggling slightly with the reception between us and Munich. You were once a trade secretary. Andrew Mountbatten Windsor was a trade envoy before you were in that department, I must stress that. But there are now growing questions about his conduct in office. Do you think there should be a parliamentary inquiry into how he behaved as trade envoy during 2001 and 2011?
Well, Camilla, let me say a few things. First of all, I was not in the Trade Department, but this is such a serious scandal, and it's engulfing the whole of government. And quite frankly, in answer to your question, the answer is yes. Everyone that's been involved, should be subject to the right kind of inquiries, police investigations. And what has taken place and happened is absolutely abhorrent, and it's right that everyone is scrutinised in terms of their roles, what has happened, information, papers that may have been shared and disclosed. I think the country will feel absolutely sick with what we are now discovering with these disclosures, and full transparency and the rule of law should be applied to absolutely everyone that was involved in all of this.
Dame Priti Patel, Shadow Foreign Secretary, thank you very much indeed for joining me this morning from Munich.
Thank you, Camilla.
Hello there, and welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. As we end the weekend and start the new week, there's going to be plenty of blustery showers around, and some of them will turn wintry once again across the northern parts of Scotland. That high pressure that we saw on Saturday has now moved off towards the continent, and we again see this low pressure in charge. But that persistent rain that we saw this afternoon is pushing off towards the North Sea, leaving many of these showers around through this evening and through the overnight period. There will be some breaks in that cloud, especially towards southeastern England, but it should remain a relatively frost-free night, even if you do get some breaks in that cloud through the early hours. But towards the eastern parts of Scotland, around Aberdeenshire, the more prolonged breaks in that cloud will allow those temperatures to dip below freezing, so we could see a frost first thing on Monday morning. But for the rest of the UK, especially across the south, it will be a mostly dry start in between these showers. A few breaks, so we'll see some sunnier spells at first thing. But further north, there is a lot more in the way of cloud, especially northern England and Northern Ireland. But again, eastern Scotland seeing some nice sunny spells. They've not seen a lot of this for much of February so far, but there is a band of these showers across the north, which could turn wintry along those higher hills through the morning and into the afternoon. Now that feeder showers do continue into the afternoon, coming in this northeasterly wind, and they can be blustery at times. If you are caught in one of those heavier showers, you'll notice those winds pick up. But in between those showers, there will be some sunnier spells, especially across the south, the northeast, and again towards the northern parts of Scotland. Temperatures-wise, around or just above the seasonal average, around 7 or 10 degrees further towards the south. Now, as I head through Monday evening, you'll see those wintry showers coming in towards northern Scotland, which is drawing in some colder air as well. But as we look through the week, Tuesday's looking like a pretty sunny day at the moment. But as we go through Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, temperatures are dipping around those mid-single figures.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Dawnie, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m. weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Zia Yusuf, Reform UK's Head of Policy, joins me now in the studio. Lovely to see you this morning. Tell us about this Reform Cabinet that is being unveiled on Tuesday. We have reported on The Telegraph that Chancellor under a future Nigel Farage government would be Robert Jenrick. Nazim Zahawi would run the Foreign Office. Richard Tice would have Business and Energy, and you would run the Home Office.
Well, the framing of your question, Camilla, suggests that you've already taken as read that Reform win the next general election.
Well,
so, firstly, thank you for the subliminal vote of confidence there. So that's the first point to make.
Should it happen?
You'll have to tune in to find out what Nigel announces. I will say this, though: the fact that you are asking that question is evidence of the strength of the team that Nigel has around him. I think there are any number of exceptional people who Nigel's going to be able to have in his cabinet. We're still, obviously, sadly, some way off a general election. Nigel announced this week that he would be beginning the process of announcing a shadow cabinet team. And, you know, I think that actually the team that he announces put up against the top 3, 4, 5, whatever the number is, against any other party will look very good indeed.
Well, I'm glad you're now answering these questions. I asked about who his future Chancellor might be when you unveiled your alternative budget, and I was told I was playing silly little games. But I will ask one follow-up question about this role of Chancellor. Should it go to Robert Jenrick, Shadow Chancellor, if Nigel Farage becomes the next Prime Minister? I thought that's a job you wanted.
Well, look, again, there are several people I think Nigel could put in the role of Shadow Chancellor that I think would be both excellent in that role and excellent as Chancellors. And there are no shortage of huge roles, by the way, that will still not have been announced this week. So, again, I think I understand why you're asking. I appreciate there's obviously keen interest in it. You won't have to wait long. We're not far off from those announcements. Again, I want to underscore the point, though, that Nigel has in his team already some exceptional people who are not just, I think, good at communicating a message, but I actually think more importantly than that, Camilla, we're going to be able to execute against a vision where we're united as a political party. And I think whether it's somebody who's joined us from the Conservative Party, having had some ministerial experience, or somebody who's come into politics from business or in other places, that is a model. That latter one in particular, Camilla, will be a model for, I would say, the majority of Nigel's further announcements. I still, the cabinet that Nigel Farage has as Prime Minister, if we are the winners of the next general election, the majority of those people will indeed be people, fresh faces from outside of politics.
I mean, some of them are clearly going to be former Tories. Are you all getting on OK? I mean, you in the past and Robert Jenrick had exchanged some interesting language, clueless, a clown. Things getting along
Which
better now.
Which direction was that? Was that
I'm
me
not
calling
quite
him that?
sure,
Yeah,
actually.
yeah.
Somebody called someone clueless and somebody retorted by saying they were a clown.
Yeah.
Look, everything going all right? A nest of singing birds,
I'm getting
these
on
days?
great with Robert. I speak to him almost every day. Robert's a thoughtful, serious person. I think he'll be a credit to the party and will do a great job if in whatever role Nigel gives him if we're in government. And, you know, the notion that we have got time to be spending bickering about positions, again, I would say that whole analysis, I'd argue, is very Tory-coded. We're focused on, number one, these May elections that are coming up, which are going to be absolutely historic. I thought last year's May elections were the most historic set of local elections in this country's history. I think these ones have the chance to be just as historic. So we're focused on that. We're focused on continued policy formulation ahead of a potential general election, which, look, it might not be until 2029, but given the shambles that is currently in place, I mean, look, Keir Starmer is no longer really running the country, is he? He's only nominally running the country. So the chances of an early general election are high. That's why Nigel has said he has put us on a war footing.
He says you're half ready to fight a general election.
We are in the process of, we've opened up parliamentary candidates. We've been inundated with exceptional candidates. I mean, I was going through, just organically, by the way, these aren't even people we've headhunted, just exceptional people.
Can you give me any numbers as to, because I know the email went out last week, didn't it? How many people have come forward?
Suffice to say, we have more than enough to cover the number of seats. But look, that number's going to continue to keep going up. We're also going to be headhunting and going out and talking to people who might not otherwise be predisposed to apply. But look, we've had lots of people from our base and our grassroots apply who have done really interesting and useful things in the real world. And I think that's so much of the diagnosis. I did a video from the NEC making this point that I actually think, you know, independently of what politicians will come and say on this show or any other show, obviously that's important. But I think so much of the diagnosis, Camilla, of what has gone wrong in this country is that it's only been career politicians, all right, making those decisions. And then also those career politicians are swapped in and out of these positions with such frequency, you couldn't possibly get anything useful done. You would never see that in the private sector in any serious organisation. So we're looking for people who've done useful, ideally exceptional things in the real world, whether that's in health, whether that's in education, whether that's the military, or whether that's in business, for example.
Are you worried about Rupert Lowe setting up this rival group, Restore UK? It's just happened. Quite a lot of the audience may be following what Mr Lowe is doing now. He's out of reform.
Well, look, it's a democracy. People are entitled to start parties, and we'll see what level of support will be achieved. I mean, look, the first past the post system, you know, someone who was chairman of this party for a considerable period of time, you know, it is really, really difficult. And I think people underestimate how hard it is. I mean, Nigel himself, if you remember, tried a number of times to just become an MP, let alone get us into this position. So, you know, look, all we'll do is continue to make our argument.
It's worrying for the right to be this divided. You've got Rupert Lowe doing his thing, Reform doing your thing, the Conservatives doing their thing. We talked earlier about the prospect of some kind of Lib Green coalition. If that beat Reform on its own, you'd have to start doing deals with the right, wouldn't you?
Well, that's a big if, right? And in that hypothetical scenario, you'd have to do the patriotic thing. But ultimately, Reform
so you
is...
would have
Reform,
to do the patriotic.
Well, no, but hold on. Reform has led north of 200 opinion polls in a row. The average of our lead in the polls consistently is 9 to 10 points. We are on course for a general election.
If the alternative was the coalition that I've just described, you just said something about patriotic duty. Are you saying that if it came to it, that the right would have to unite to see off a progressive alliance?
Well, I think as soon as you're in the territory of that conversation, look, frankly, this is why I came into politics, I'd be extremely concerned about the way the country is going to end up, because there's nothing, frankly, right about the Tory party in terms of how they've governed. And by the way, as a result of the recent defections to Reform, I would argue the Wets are now going to continue to dominate the Conservative Party.
Yeah,
so all we're talking about there...
difficult to do a deal with. I'm merely making the point, because I'm going to hammer in on this.
Yeah.
You're not ruling out a future coalition if it prevents a progressive alliance taking control of this country. The Greens, the Libs and Labour, are you and Nigel Farage and others going to stand by and let that happen because you don't think you can do deals with the Tories or indeed Rupert Lowe if the time came?
I think the focus for us is to ensure that we win an outright majority at the general election. And again, this isn't just something I'm saying, Camilla. It's why I came into politics. My position on this has been consistent. I voted Tory historically. I was a member of the Conservative Party, right? I was excited when Boris Johnson was the Prime Minister initially and got Brexit done. But then what they ended up doing as a result of Boris, as a result of Priti Patel, who was just on before me, was to govern in a manner that I would argue is actually to the left even of Keir Starmer in terms of border policy.
It sounds to me like you're not ruling out a future pact. But let's move on for a minute, because I am intrigued if you are the person who might run the Home Office under a future Nigel Farage government. What did you make of Sir Jim Ratcliffe's comments about parts of Britain being colonised?
I thought it was really interesting that Jim Ratcliffe says that migrants have effectively colonised in the UK. And the level of anger and uproar about his use of language relative to the actual issue and concern that he was pointing out, which, by the way, millions and millions of people in this country share that concern.
So you think that parts of Britain have been colonised?
Well, let's look at the dictionary definition of colonise, which is to send people to a piece of land in order to sort of take it over or to govern. And if you look at, for example, the fact that more people have turned up on our beaches illegally since 2018 than landed on the beaches of D-Day, the majority, indeed vast majority, of those people who have arrived are A, men, military-age men, and B, generally from countries that, frankly, despise this country, generally. That's a huge concern. In fact, it's a larger number than the British Army has available to it.
But he's speaking about more than that, isn't he? I think he's referring to perhaps parts of Birmingham, parts of Leicester. He may be referring to Tower Hamlets. Robert Jenrick, your colleague now, has made a point about going to Birmingham and seeing, quotes, no white faces, about some areas of the UK being no-go areas. Do you agree with this? Because what he's referring to is a Islamic colonisation of some parts of the UK. You're a Muslim man. Does that language accord with what?
Well, I'm not sure if you use that phrase, but I understand the question you're asking. So
is number one,
we've got to look at the sheer numbers, right? This is an inevitable consequence, Camilla, of the Tories basically lying in 4 consecutive manifestos, saying they were going to cut net immigration down to the tens of thousands, meaning people in this country voted overwhelmingly for less immigration time and time again. They ended up bringing in 12 million people net over their gross over their 14 years, 6.5 million people net. Then you can also talk about the composition. The Boris wave, which we've talked about a lot. Millions and millions of people who've arrived, the vast majority from non-EU countries, and then the vast majority of those on non-work visas. Again, nobody voted for this. That's a fiscal disaster that needs to be averted, which is another reason, by the way, in terms of voting for a party that is going to abolish. We've already said we would abolish indefinite leave to remain, avert the Boris wave, deport every illegal immigrant in this country. There is only one party, Camilla, which is serious about doing it and has a serious chance of being the next government. I think this is a once-in-a-lifetime chance to get that, and if we fail at this, I don't know if we'll get another chance. And then to the point about certain areas in this country, the Green candidate, again, this isn't just my opinion. The Green candidate in Gorton and Denton has just put out a leaflet in Urdu.
Yes.
And we're seeing this, we've got these Gaza MPs.
Steer away from discussing the by-election purely because we then have to list every candidate. But I'm just being in general. Say even if you looked at Tower Hamlets and the situation there, OK, this is a council which is now full of I suppose some British, but a lot of non-British people, lots of non-British surnames. If that's what Jim Ratcliffe is referring to, I don't know. Parts of Birmingham, I've just expressed what Robert Jenrick said about parts of Birmingham. He also used the term no-go zones. Leicester, same could apply. What can reform actually do about that? Because if you agree that these areas have been colonised, can they be decolonised? And should they be?
So the first thing we need to do is stop the situation getting worse. Right? At the moment, it is not only getting worse, it is getting worse at an accelerated manner. I mean, more illegal migrants have turned up on boats under Keir Starmer than any other Prime Minister, right? So we're now already in a situation that is deteriorating fast. We need to stop the boats from coming. Number 2, yes, we need to embark upon mass deportations. That is no longer a controversial position. I mean,
of people that have been here for a long, long time.
If your status is illegal, we're clear about this.
What
You should expect to be deported.
Legal, but you haven't integrated, you don't speak English, and you are colonising your own local area?
Well, that's where our indefinite leave to remain policy comes into play. So what we have said is our expectations, and Nigel's expectations as Prime Minister of migrants in this country on ILR, will be, number one, that you speak English to a good standard. Number two, because the current standard of English requirement, by the way, is a joke. It's nowhere near it, so it needs to be a higher standard. We've been clear about that. Number two, you cannot commit crime. And number three, you need to more than pay your way. Right, you need to be a net positive contributor to the economy, and that manifests in the form of a materially higher contribution payment, minimum salary requirement. Yes, we'll have things like spousal routes and things like that. That will almost certainly result in a significant portion of people needing their state. They will be given a period of chance to leave the country.
You're happy to be at the helm of that, because it's not going to make you particularly
Camilla, we don't
popular.
have a choice. The Boris wave is going to cost hundreds of billions of pounds, and that's not even in the OBR's numbers. People watching this programme who pay their taxes, you cannot expect them to, having voted, by the way, for less immigration, for this immigration to have happened, which isn't, frankly, even the fault of the people who arrived, it's the fault of the politicians who allowed it to happen and betrayed the voters, to now expect this country to lurch into, I think, fiscal oblivion if these decisions are not made, I think is unacceptable. So, yes, there are going to be very difficult decisions that need to be made, and we've been crystal clear that we will make them.
Zia Yusuf, thank you very much indeed for joining me. We'll look out for the announcement on Tuesday, I think it is, about the shadow cabinet.
Can't wait to get in that sea.
Lovely and warm.
Just like the feeling of having great travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
If you're heading to Europe this half term, well, it's a mixed bag out there. Outbreaks of rain and some heavy showers and thunderstorms. Best of the sunshine, though, really confined to the Canary Islands and towards the south of Spain. Otherwise, outbreaks of rain across Portugal and northern Spain. Across the Mediterranean, that's where we're going to see areas of showers and thunderstorms pushing their way through. Otherwise, best of the sunshine really across the Canary Islands, highs of 25.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first.
Well, and that's what you get on GB News. Lively debates, lively conversation.
And we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pierce.
And me, Miriam Gates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
Bold. They are under no illusion.
Ray.
Are you a human trafficker?
Boundless. I've had enough of the nonsense, and I'm not afraid to say it.
Don't get this on the BBC.
Every weeknight, I tear through the headlines.
The smell of gasoline. Should we be worried about it?
From Westminster madness to cultural war chaos.
What I'm going to do now, they are throwing things out the car as we speak.
Get ready, Britain. Here we go. Patrick Christie's tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
no,
isn't it?
No,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Dawnie, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel. No matter the state it's in, this is our nation. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for a genuine, honest discussion on where we have been, where we are going, and where we are with the people who set the direction. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Andy Burnham's former nighttime economy czar, Sacha Lord, joins me now. Mr. Lord, lovely to see you this morning. I mean, Manchester and Greater Manchester has done very well under your watch, and indeed Andy Burnham's. £6 to £7 billion annually the nighttime economy has been valued at, supporting up to 50,000 jobs. Those stats, I hope, are up to date. So you've done very well with it. We'll get on to what more needs to be done for hospitality across the country. But in the first instance, I have to ask you, as you work very closely with him, would Andy Burnham be a better leader of the Labour Party and indeed the country than Keir Starmer right now?
Well, the simple answer is yes, he would. I think anyone would, to be honest, because he's the most hated PM of my lifetime. I watched your programme this morning, Camilla, and frankly, I felt sorry for the Labour MP. Was his name Graeme Downie?
Graeme Downie, yes.
Yeah, he's been given lines. He has to sit there and say these lines. And, if he was linked up to a lie detector, I think it'd be spiking all over the show. There is no way on earth he believes Keir Starmer will be Prime Minister at the next general election. Not a chance.
I mean, to be fair, I do feel sorry for some of these Labour MPs. We would have wanted to have spoken to the Foreign Secretary, Yvette Cooper. For some reason, she couldn't find time for GB News, despite our soaring ratings and all the rest of it. What can you say? It is difficult for him, but there is a contradiction at the heart of him supporting Anna Sarwar, who doesn't actually support the Prime Minister. That's a difficult situation for Keir Starmer to be in right now, with the May elections fast approaching.
It's an impossible situation. And, I worked all my life in Greater Manchester. And when I've been putting on my festivals and events, I've got to know a lot of the Labour councillors. And, I am so worried for them, Camilla, come the 7th of May, because they are hard-working people, and through no fault of their own, they're going to lose their jobs come the 7th of May. They're going to be completely wiped out. And after that, I think that's when there's going to be a leadership bid. And it is totally unfair. And this is coming from the top down. A fish rots from the head, and Starmer just has to go.
But your man Burnham doesn't have a route to Parliament, does he? He's been blocked. And let's not talk about the by-election, please, because otherwise we have to get into complicated listing of candidates. But he's been blocked. There's now talk in the Mail on Sunday that Lucy Powell might stand aside in Liverpool. But he'll be blocked again, won't he, if Starmer's allies continue to dominate the decision-making on this?
Well, I think this just shows how weak and cowardice the PM is. That Sunday morning before the NEC actually met, the MPs and the ministers were all over the news saying, we're going to put our best team player forward. Well, every single poll showed that there was one person that would succeed, and that was Andy Burnham, and he got blocked. How did he find out he was getting blocked after 30 years' commitment to the Labour Party? He read it in The Guardian, Camilla. That is appalling. No one picked up the phone for him. How's he responded to that? He's out knocking on doors. So, that is the class of the man. And it just shows where the Labour Party is at the moment. And, they're cancelling elections. And I'm reading in the press that they're trying to dirty journalists by paying 26 grand to dig up. That's not what we want. People want our high streets to be supported. Where is the support from Rachel Reeves, who on more than one occasion during the election told me she was the Chancellor of Business and Growth? It's simply not the case. I thought she would come in and support the pubs, the small restaurants, the independent bars, and so our high streets are devastated.
OK, well, let's get on to pubs, Mr Lord. I'm going to just correct you on the Labour Together. Actually, it was 36 grand that was paid to apparently dish dirt on 2 Sunday Times journalists, but I digress. On pubs, we saw Andy Burnham and Angela Rayner in a pub this week together, calling for more measures to help the hospitality sector. What's the one thing the government should do? I know there are many, but what's the priority for the government, for the Chancellor and Rachel Reeves, to save this industry?
The one single mechanism that they can now control because of Brexit is our VAT rate.
Yes.
You know, we're at 20%. We're the highest VAT rate in the whole of Europe, where it averages between 8 and 9%. We are the 5th biggest industry in the whole of the UK, the 3rd largest employer. And we have a cost of living crisis at the moment. People can't afford to go into our pubs and our restaurants. So by helping them to reduce that VAT rate, we could lower our prices. You know, a pint at the moment on average is £6, Camilla. It is ridiculous. And I have friends every summer texting me, well, I'm in Tenerife, I've just paid €3 for a pint. How come I'm paying £6 in Manchester, £7 in London? And one of the answers to that is we are taxed 20 times more than a pint in Germany, our alcohol duty. You know, that is how much we are being taxed at the moment in the UK. It feels as an industry that we're just simply tax collectors for HMRC at the moment. That's how it feels. You know, places are busy, but no one's making any money at all.
And is it true, finally, Mr Lord, that out of every pint a publican sells, they only get to retain 14 pence of it, 1/4?
Actually, it's less than that. It's 13 pence now. Once you paid your alcohol duty, you pay your VAT, you pay your beer, utility bills, staffing, rent, 13p on a £6 pint. I mean, when you've got the Chancellor putting business rates up by 76% on pubs and 115% on hotels that cost tens of thousands of pounds extra, you have to sell hundreds of thousands of extra pints. And everybody watching, knowing this, knows that that's not possible. So we need the help, and we urgently need the help. And I thought that's what Labour were going to do. And they're not. They're spending time with the big corporates, and there needs to be spending time with the small independent businesses. They are the bloodline of our high street.
Sacha Lord, thank you very much indeed for joining me this morning. We await the spring statement, should it go ahead. There'd been some talk that it might not, and see if there are any extra measures in there for the hospitality industry. Thank you very much indeed.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello there and welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. As we end the weekend and start the new week, there's going to be plenty of blustery showers around, and some of them will turn wintry once again across the northern parts of Scotland. That high pressure that we saw on Saturday has now moved off towards the continent, and we again see this low pressure in charge. But that persistent rain that we saw this afternoon is pushing off towards the North Sea, leaving many of these showers around through this evening and through the overnight period. There will be some breaks in that cloud, especially towards southeastern England, but it should remain a relatively frost-free night, even if you do get some breaks in that cloud through the early hours. But towards the eastern parts of Scotland, around Aberdeenshire, the more prolonged breaks in that cloud will allow those temperatures to dip below freezing, so we could see a frost first thing on Monday morning. But for the rest of the UK, especially across the south, it will be a mostly dry start in between these showers. A few breaks, so we'll see some sunnier spells first thing. But further north, there is a lot more in the way of cloud, especially northern England and Northern Ireland. But again, eastern Scotland seeing some nice sunny spells. They've not seen a lot of this for much of February so far, but there is a band of these showers across the north which could turn wintry along those higher hills through the morning and into the afternoon. Now that feeder showers do continue into the afternoon, coming in this northeasterly wind, and they can be blustery at times. If you are caught in one of those heavier showers, you'll notice those winds pick up. But in between those showers, there will be some sunnier spells, especially across the south, the northeast, and again towards the northern parts of Scotland. Temperatures-wise, around or just above the seasonal average, around 7 or 10 degrees further towards the south. Now, as I head through Monday evening, you'll see those wintry showers coming in towards northern Scotland, which is drawing in some colder air as well. But as we look through the week, Tuesday's looking like a pretty sunny day at the moment. But as we go through Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, temperatures are dipping around those mid-single figures.
Today, clouds overhead. Total zen within. Box Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Make sure you don't miss the chance to grab an incredible £30,000 in tax-free cash. And that's not all. Courtesy of Riviera Travel, there's a terrific £10,000 holiday for two to be won. Choose from over 30 worldwide destinations like Thailand, South Africa, or even Sri Lanka. There's just 2 weeks left to enter. For another chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls